creating curiosity by asking better questions. This is Shed Talk. Hey, good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to Shed Talk. We're going to do things a little bit different today with Shed Talk because I've been getting a lot of feedback regarding the guests that I've had and asking a lot of direct questions about business and about health, wealth, and mindset. So in this episode, what we're going to be doing is deep diving into some of the questions that I'd received through direct messaging about entrepreneurship, how I got started, other little things. And I really appreciate the actual feedback that people have been giving me and asking how to deep dive better questions. So thanks for joining me on Shed Talk, where we're creating curiosity and asking ourselves better questions. I'm Kevin Halliday. I have multiple businesses out there: Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, an investor in Brick and Barrel, The Rooftop, Plexi Canada. I'm in the fitness industry. I'm in basically all different types of genres. So I have lots of experience. So if this is your first time, it's all about asking ourselves better questions and seeing where we can grow as individuals.
Now for our first question, Kevin, we got this DM that said, when did you first consider being an entrepreneur?
Oh, thanks. And by the way, we're doing this one a little different. So one of the questions that came in after all the podcasts that we'd been doing was, when was the first time to becoming an entrepreneur? And basically, you don't know you're going to be an entrepreneur until you actually get yourself into it. I use the word entrepreneur very loosely. A lot of people say, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing that. There's two types. Are you an entrepreneur as in that you'd like to be an entrepreneur, or did you just buy yourself a job? So sometimes you have to really think about who you are, why you're doing it, and how you want to grow. Because being an entrepreneur is not an easy task. It's lonely at the top. We got to work hard. Or are you doing it that you just purchased yourself a job and then basically you're just working 9 to 5 through yourself and you're working in the business and you basically bought it? So when I first started out with becoming an entrepreneur with Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, I remember going into and getting my first sale was in a Home Depot parking lot. And it was one of the hardest things because I had to make sure as an entrepreneur and going into this and getting my first sale, and I hadn't installed railings, and this is with the Spindle, Stairs, and Railings side before, is I hadn't installed railings before. I hadn't even been inside that business. I've been in it for a few years, off and on in a family business. But the biggest challenge that I found was that I had to have, as an entrepreneur, what we call non-negotiables. When you do something in life, no matter what it is, you have to have non-negotiables. You have to have a sense of, I am not going to retreat. It's a no retreat, no surrender. If this doesn't work, that's it. It's over. Meaning not you're going to kill yourself, but it's over. I can go work at McDonald's. It wasn't, well, if I don't make this, I'll go do this. I'll go do this and I'll do this. No, you have to decide exactly what you want, how you're going to get it, and make sure it's a non-negotiable that you move forward in everything that you do. So when I got my first sale at a Home Depot parking lot, and that was to sell product, and I bought the product from there, and that paid for my business license. Once I've got my business license, I was able to start my business. And at that point, I still hadn't decided what the name of the company was. And as an entrepreneur, I had to look at it and say, how am I going to make this look big? I need to make it look like I'm bigger than I am. And my business has been around for over 25 years. We're across Canada, basically North America, supplying everything. But my first sale was all that about how do you become big? My phone number, and this is 25 years ago, is exactly the same phone number as it is today. And I didn't have a building. I sold out of my vehicle, and the vehicle was a Ford F-150, a brown one, and I had filing folders beside me. And I would go in and go door to door and ask people in the construction industry if they need any railings in their house in new construction for the builders. And knowing that I had to make it look that I was larger than what I was, the phone number had to be identical. My website, and this goes back before websites were done, I had to have what we called SEO, and they didn't even have SEO back then. One of the biggest things was porn was one of the hottest items on the website. You type in anything and it automatically go to porn. Well, obviously they corrected that so that doesn't happen anymore. But we made the name of Spindle, Stairs, and Railings due to the fact that the internet was just starting to come out. And the internet would be key name word searches, which would be obviously Spindle, obviously Stairs, and Railings. And understanding that way back in the day, I made sure that I had that name. And then from there, I was able to get a website. And I thought the website was going to be Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, but we actually had it as greatstairs.com because I couldn't buy SSR.com because it belonged to Chevrolet. Chevrolet owned the rights to the .com. So, and if you remember the Ford Chev, that yellow vehicle, that was around way back 25 years ago. That was one of the vehicles that they had, and they tagged it with SSR, so I couldn't have it. So we had to come up with a better insight name, which was actually greatstairs.com. And the name Spindle, Stairs, and Railings was there because we needed the name relevant to everything we're doing, obviously Spindle Stairs. And then in the phone book, and the phone book was out, and that's the big yellow pages phone books were there. And we had to make sure that we were at the key name searches of the yellow page under Spindle. We were under Stairs, and then we were under Railings. So we actually hit all parts of the yellow pages back in the day. By the time the yellow pages were done, that obviously hit us back into the website area. But what was really interesting about starting out as an entrepreneur, that's where that whole aspect came about the name. So Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, as an entrepreneur, couldn't be Kevin's Railings because it was too small. We had to make it look bigger, larger than life, which was Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, that we could hit a broad range. So that's where that name came in. Now, we really had to deep dive. And I say we, because my wife and I were involved in the business then, was we really had to deep dive what we call as a BHAG, or big audacious goal, is how big could we actually make Spindle, Stairs, and Railings, or how big do I want to be? And I said, I want to be Canada-wide. I want to be the largest railing company. And that goal had to start at zero. The first day we opened up, the mindset was already set up that we were going to be the largest, the best that ever has been in the railing and stair industry, that we were going to revolutionize the way things were done. And even at that point, I had no idea how to do it, but I knew that the end goal was that we were going to be big. However we did it, whatever happened, we knew that we were determined to move forward. By having that in my back pocket of non-negotiables moving forward, I was able to start, obviously, the company with my first sale, and I would go door to door. And then our first bay was in the first, basically, 2 months. Then I got a bay, and then we started doing that. As we started getting bigger, and this is all over a 1-year process, the company started to really expand, and we started to see we're bringing people in. Now, I'd never installed a railing before in my life, but I didn't have to install the railing systems in my life. I needed to hire great people. Understanding what great people were all about, and as an entrepreneur, we actually basically had to look at it and say, well, here's a guy that's really good at installing. Now, he may not be good at business, but he's a great installer. It's kind of like one of the things that we always say is that I can run a hospital, but it doesn't mean I can do brain surgery. And it goes with any business. Find what you're great at and really focus on it. And I may get off a little track here. So did you have a question in there?
We have another question. And you have said, Kevin, that you have to hire the right people. So how do you know that they're the right person?
Good question. Thanks for that, bringing that in. One of the things about hiring people, and what I was just talking about before, is that running that hospital and hiring a brain surgeon, is really understanding when you're hiring people, is understanding what their gifts and abilities are. You get a lot of people that'll say, you know what, it's really, really important to fire fast and take a long time to hire. But sometimes that can bite you in the butt. And what I found from experience, because we go through a lot of people, people come in, but we truly don't ask ourselves a better question when we're hiring somebody. We have a job title that's in play for them, that it could be sales or it could be a guy in the back, and they come in and they want to be in the warehouse. But as they're in that warehouse and we're asking, okay, can you do this? You got this? Yeah, they have a talent, they can do it, and it makes whatever, $5 an hour. But if we ask ourselves a better question for that person that we're hiring, we may be able to create another job opportunity that we didn't even know that we had. Then all of a sudden, we're able to add on to that added value, like in the company that we didn't even know. This person could be really good in the tech side. All of a sudden, why aren't we not looking at the tech side? I have a guy that can do it. So hiring the right people doesn't mean the first hire's the wrong. It just means you didn't ask the better question. Now, mind you, there's people that don't show up for the work. You can't control that. I always look at it as when you're hiring somebody, bring them in, start them off, but make sure you're communicating and asking them better questions and finding out what their superpower is. You will learn something that you never knew you learned about them. And then all of a sudden, once you find it and tap into what their superpower is, you're able to create new jobs and new opportunities. When I hired people, I would always look at and say, hey, what can you do? And then all of a sudden, I didn't know. So the things you know that you didn't know, this guy can do this. And I said, well, wait a second. If you're great at this, why did you apply? Well, that's the only thing that I could find that was work. But wait a second. If you can actually build engines and or whatever that storytelling is on that side, well, why don't we focus you over there and then find out and really absorb what you're great at? And again, asking the right people and the people that come in a better question. And people talk about culture in a business. Well, culture in the business is making sure that you're listening to your people, listening to what their gifts and abilities are, and exploiting them. Now, exploiting in a good way that you're truly listening, and how to be great. Create that wow factor with everybody that you're dealing with. So let's follow up a little bit more about and deep dive this one a little better. So they have said you have to hire the right people. We always have to hire the right people. We assume we've hired the right person, or else we wouldn't have hired them. Now, how do we really know that they're the right person? Unfortunately, it's a trial and error, and it's an interpretation. That person you're hiring for that position, you assume they're the right person. They're the greatest person since sliced bread. Now, that other person is going, oh, I can't wait to work for this company. I think I can grow. Now, there's two storytellings here. You hired the person to do this job, whatever that job will be. They're coming onto that job thinking they're doing this. Was the communication back and forth between the two, understanding what they're going to do? Because a lot of miscommunications, and yes, they have a letter of offer, yes, they have that, is that what is it in it for them to grow and be better in the organization? Not about, and when I mean growth, is not about making more money. Yes, we all want to make money, but how do I grow with an organization and take pride in growing what we've done and created the wow factor with each one? Once you've decided and they're on board with that, then you're able to mold them into that great person that you want them to be. Now, at the same time, they may be able to mold you as an owner and say, wait a second, I like this part of the business, but I don't like this part. Not that they're dictating, but you have to listen to them, and all of a sudden, what are the things you know that you didn't know? Now, I didn't know that this guy does not like to cut this thing this way. He'd rather do it a different way. Well, does it mean that it's right? It just means that we didn't listen to him the first time. Listening, developing, and growing is the most important thing we do. We have to listen to our employees. We have to listen to our managers. As an owner, we need to lead and not boss people around. Oh, you got to do this because I know this for 25 years. There's things today that we don't know, and guys that are bringing in ideas, and they may not even know, but all of a sudden that one moment in time, they think of something different. That is the right person to hire. And they can't be scared to have a conversation with you. Good, bad, or indifferent. But if you come to the table with criticism and say, oh, this is really bad, make sure you come on the other hand with a solution. The biggest and the best people in the world, it's not about your complaining. It's about how did you solve the complaint? Now I listen to you more, and now I can build and triple my company 10 times because now we have a solution. It may not be the right one, but it was right to you.
Now, we got one more question
Yep.
to go over here. What is one thing you do when business is down due to uncontrolled external events to continue growth and scalability?
Good question. Thanks for that one again. What does it take what is the one thing you do when business is down to external events? Example, COVID, market share, anything out there. Now, that's a great question with any business and any basic market that you're in. So if you're in hospitality, if you're in the construction industry, and the market seems to go down, the idea now is to look at it, and a lot of people, what we call it, they'll right size. Now, First thing is internally, check to make sure, are you overstaffed? Do you have too many expenditures? So you need to control that. That's the first thing, is check on that first part is control. But the most elaborate and the best solution that I always say when a market shifts or something happens is, again, I always go back to ask yourself a better question. Sit back and go, okay, what are we not doing out there in the marketplace? What are we not seeing? Example, when COVID hit and it hit everybody. Yes, it was bad. Okay. Right across the board. Some people made some good money. Some people didn't. And industries were at an even Steven. But if you sat back as an entrepreneur and think about, wait a second, this isn't a woe me, oh, too bad, okay, this isn't going to work. It's about, all right, how do I become the 1% of the 1% to be able to take this to the next level? And we had sat there and talked about and say, okay, everything's even. What are we going to do tomorrow? It's not like we're dead and we're dying and it's over. How does business create, and what do we see that we don't see? Because we know right now with COVID, yes, we're in COVID, there's going to be a business created, but what's going to happen in 5 years from now? So we need to be ahead of that game. So if you read it in the paper, you see it there, it's already too late. We need to be the thought providers of the future. So what does that look like? Well, we created basically within 24 hours a new company called Plexi Canada. And we created Plexi and supplying that everywhere. Now that was just one part, fast into the market, and then obviously it changed and we had to get out. But to adapt into a market is actually see new opportunities. What is your superpower? Now I'm in the construction industry as a whole. And that was being hit differently. But what is the superpower in the construction? Wait a second, I have the labor. Well, do I have to manufacture spindle stairs and railings? Well, wait a second, let's ask ourselves a better question. Can I manufacture a different commodity? Plexi, that was plexiglass. Could we do something else? Could we make something different in the market that we never even thought about? Let's ask ourselves a better question. Sure enough, we are able to basically adapt and ask ourselves a better question and create new commodities and new widgets. So every time, and this goes from experience over the 25 years and all the businesses that I've owned, is always asking, okay, here's where we are. The market's shifting. How do I go to the next level? Well, the next level means ask yourself a better question. See things that are not being done. Now, if you've seen it in the paper, again, I go back, it's too late. Now, with technology today, AI, this is the coolest thing. Now, AI comes into play. I'm able to sit back and go to AI and go, okay, what's trending? Just like social media, just like podcasts, like everything, and say, okay, what's happening in the industry? Here it is. This is what's happening in the industry. Here's keyword name searches, and here's what's happening. Well, that's interesting. Here I am today, and we're going to watch this podcast, and you see this podcast, and you hear this podcast, is we're in the Wild West of today. So our past basically dictates the future. So here we are with a podcast. It's the Wild West. There's thousands and millions of people on podcasts, very low entry fee to get in here. How do people generate revenue? Yeah, someone's saying it's doing this. Someone's saying they're doing this. But did anybody ever ask themselves the right questions about podcasting, social media, and where can we take it? So here we are in a podcast and a vodcast, building basically shed talk, the things you know that you don't know, asking ourselves better questions. How do I take this, building a foundation, and you get to watch the growth in this, and all of a sudden turn that into something that's never been done before in the industry? And in the industry is, I mean, in the media aspect. But let's go back to the beginning of media. Think about media as when it first started off with television. They came in. How did they sell television? Meaning color. It was advertisers popped in, and then that grew. Well, here we are. Here we are with podcasts. It's brand new, and people go, it's really hard to make money. You got to do this. We just, again, here we go. We haven't asked ourselves a better question about how do we take this as a whole and make it better. Now, if we chase the money, then we have an issue. You'll never be able to be successful. Do we chase this as a passion or as a hobby? Sure, that's okay. But are you going to be consistent in how you grow and how you see the algorithm, whatever that's going to be? So we may have 5 listeners today, but I know in a year from now, I'll be in the thousands. Now, does that mean that I did anything different than today, than yesterday or tomorrow coming up in the future? No, it just means I'm consistent. I get to watch for trends. I get to see how things change. Just like market or trending, things are being different. Like, how do you know you're in a bad market if you're making money? Well, you're in a bad market, you're making, well, I'm not in a bad market. No, We just didn't ask ourselves a better question. Here I am in the podcast industry, it doesn't make us any money, but is that what it's all about? It's truly asking ourselves, how do we take this entity and make it massive? Amazon, prime example. They didn't make any money as they're starting. They came with a vision. They're going from here, doing this, this, this. Here they are today. We're in an industry right now with the podcast that we can actually take this somewhere else. Now, do I have the answer for it? No, but I know one thing. I'm asking a better question every day when I do a podcast, when I do a vodcast. Every time I bring a guest in, I learn something more, and how that grows, how that builds is basically all about business. All about, here's a depressed market. It's no such thing as depressed. It just means we didn't ask ourselves a better question. So when we see this as a podcast going to go crazy, you get to follow us and see how we actually take this and make it into big business. Well, thanks for joining me on Shed Talk. This was a little bit different, a Q&A questions, and I loves doing more. If you have more, give me a DM. Ask me questions that create curiosity. And if you're asking me a better question and DM me, I'll pull your name and win a prize. Now you know. Shed Talk.